welcome you to this roundtable on the art and science of developing leaders, presented by BIMTech in association with the National HRD Network and our knowledge partner, Avoidance. I am Manashi Chaudhary, Associate Professor with BIMTech, and I am your anchor for the evening. Before we proceed, I have a small request to make. Kindly put your cell phones onto silent mode. On behalf of the organizers, we would like to thank each one of you for the overwhelming response we got for this evening event today. We would also like to thank NDTV Profit for coming on board with us as our TV partner for the event. Last year, we conducted similar roundtables in Gurgaon, Chennai, Mumbai, and Kolkata on the theme The Art and Science of Developing Leaders, with different sub-themes, and received tremendous response from the HR fraternity in all the places. While those deliberations have been compiled and placed on your tables for your ready reference, this year we are back again with another series of discussions in collaboration with our partners and panelists. We bring to you this session on the theme Leadership, the India Way, where we aim to share research from Ayan Hewitt and insights from our experienced business leaders. For Indian business leaders, the mantra has become one of creative growth in reaching millions of customers with innovative products, of helping to lift vast numbers from poverty, and of giving people of limited means what had only been available to the affluent. I would now like to invite Dr. H. Chaturvedi, Director, Birla Institute of Management Technology, to deliver the welcome note. With a master's degree in commerce and doctorate in business management from Agra University, Dr. H. Chaturvedi has more than 35 years of experience in teaching, research, and administration. As a former director with the All India Council for Technical Education, a statutory body under the Ministry of HRD, Government of India, he has been associated with the formulation of policies, planning, regulation, and control of management education, as well as other disciplines under technical education. Dr. Chaturvedi is a founder member and the alternate president of Education Promotion Society for India, a national platform for eminent educationists, education service providers, and edu entrepreneurs. He is also the president of the Alumni Association of Agra University and Ranganathan Society for Social Welfare and Library Development, Uttar Pradesh. Over to you, sir.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is a matter of great pleasure that the HR Roundtable on Leadership, the India Way, presented by BIMTech in association with NHRD, Ayan Hewitt, and NDTV Profit, is being held at Pune. We are excited to be here. It is a city where one can see the traditional India and the modern India living together. It is a city which has given great leaders to our nation who have shown us the path for leading the Indian society and for shaping the idea behind the formation of India as a republic. I can remember names of great leaders like Mahadev Govind Ranade, R.G. Bhandarkar, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, Jyotiba Phule, and Bal Gangadhar Tilak. Mahatma Gandhi was imprisoned here at Yerbada Jail and Aga Khan Palace on several occasions in his political career. The city has made tremendous progress after 1970s. And I've been told that there was a great deluge in 60s when the whole new city was developed. Old city was almost destroyed. And now Pune is a hub for engineering, automobile, and IT industry. Well-known companies like Telco, Tata Tech Technologies, Bajaj, Bharat Forge, Kinetic, Alpha Level, Atlas, Copco, Sandvik, Thermex, General Motors, Volkswagen, and Fiat are running their manufacturing plants at Pune. The city is rightly described as Oxford of the East due to the presence of a large number of universities, colleges, research laboratories, corporate training centers, which are joined by lakhs of scholars and scientists, both from India and abroad. My compliments to all of you for living at Pune, a great city with a great legacy and bright future. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have a very impressive panel of speakers who bring their vast and rich leadership experience to this forum. I would like to extend a warm welcome to Mr. Ajay Soni, Asia Pacific, Practice Leader, Leadership Consulting, your Hewitt, Ms. Anjali Bias, Director HR, SKF India Limited, Mr. Bobby Kuriakoje, Director HR, Forbes Marshall, Mr. Chetan Tolia, Chief People Officer, Tata Power Limited, Mr. Gajet Chandil, President Group HR, Tata Auto Com Systems Limited, and Mr. Vinod Chaturvedi, Senior VP HR, Ultratech Cements Limited. They are known in the industry for their dedicated practice of leadership. May I request you to welcome them with a huge round of applause. In today's roundtable, the illustrious panelists will help us to figure out the Indian way of leading business. The topic is relevant for all stakeholders of business, including society, and particularly those who are responsible for leadership development in India. Our country has a way of doing business that brings together business leadership with national leadership and societal leadership. Many heads of business are deeply involved in matters from climate change, electoral reforms to child education, and they find it entirely appropriate and even necessary to make their views on such matters public. The heads of many Indian businesses believe that national growth is essential for their own profitable expansion. Also, India has a long-standing tradition of companies committed to societal betterment through philanthropic giving and investment in infrastructure near their facilities. There are towns and cities in our country like Jamshedpur which have been developed by business houses. Indian business leaders care as much about national purpose as about financial results. They think broadly and act pragmatically, setting grand agendas and then repeatedly testing through trial and error what works and what doesn't. Emphasizing improvisation and adaptability, they stress sideways movements into areas with promising prospects, building a model of what should work by witnessing what does work. Nano can be one example where it has been innovated continuously. It has faced a lot of problems, but even then the company is continuously upgrading it, improving it, and the whole world is very curious about this car. Here I would like to draw your kind attention towards two interesting studies which have been published during recent years. I have read these two books. The first major research study has been done by professors from Wharton School. They are Peter Capelli, Harveer Singh, Jitendra Singh, and Michael Singh. It has been published by Harvard Business Press in 2010 with the title, The India Way, How India's Top Business Leaders Are Revolutionizing Management. They had approached 150 top companies in India and interviewed more than 100 CEOs and other top leaders to know whether there is an Indian way of leadership. And if yes, then how to define its distinctive features. Authors of this study have ultimately identified 4 principal practices of the Indian way of leadership. These are holistic engagement with employees, improvisation and adaptability, creative value proposition, and broad vision and purpose. Bundled together, these principles constitute a distinctive model and one that contrasts with leadership models of developed markets, especially the United States, where there is too much emphasis on delivering shareholders' value. Indian business leaders as a group place greater stress on social purpose and transcendent mission. They are able to do so by devoting special attention to overcoming innumerable barriers with creative solutions and an engaging workforce. Let me talk about another research-based publication titled In Search of Change Maestros, authored by Dr. Petal Singh and Dr. Asha Bhandarkar, published in 2011 by SIF. It documents the contribution of 7 great Indian business leaders and institution builders who had the vision and fortitude to create world-class Indian corporations. The case studies included in this book are Kumar Mangalam Birla, Sajjan Jindal, M. Damodaran, K. V. Kamath, Sunil Bharti Mittal, A.M. Naik, and Kiran Majumdar Shaw. Dr. Singh and Dr. Bhandarkar have highlighted the 8 driving principles of their leadership success. These are contextual sensitivity, compelling vision and purpose, winning streak, pupil connect and engagement, meaningful contribution with speed, creative destruction for transformation, evolving self, and culture architecture. Friends, you will agree with me that 21st century belongs to nations from emerging markets like India, China, Brazil, South Africa, etc. Greater integration of economies of BRICS countries will also witness in coming years transformation of many more Indian business houses into multinational corporations. While the India way of doing business has helped driving exceptional growth in companies ranging from ICICI and Infosys to Reliance and Tata, the Global Business Committee has remained remarkably unaware of both its methods and the results. So this is very symptomatic of the global management and leadership practices which are mostly North America centric. Whatever good is there, it is highlighted. Whatever failures are there, these are not highlighted. And the success of Indian leaders at global level are hardly cited except here and there. Given the success of Indian economy at a time when many Western economies are languishing, now is a good time for Western firms to take a careful look at the India way. I am thankful to Ian Hewitt for suggesting this theme for us. They belong to the International Consulting Committee, and I think the leadership model or India way of leadership can be debated, deliberated here today and on many other occasions. These Indian conglomerates will also produce Indian leaders with global influence. I am hopeful that HR Roundtable will provide new insights on all of these vital issues. It is a matter of great delight to see a galaxy of corporate leaders assembled here, and also some of the eminent academicians from Pune to participate in this HR Roundtable. Before I conclude my welcome note, I would like to express our gratitude to National HR Network Pune chapter, especially its leader Ms. Anjali Bais and her team, and also Mr. Tope of Pune Management Association. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, a hearty welcome to all of you. Thank you.
Now may I request Mr. Ajay Soni, Asia Pacific Practice Leader for Leadership Consulting at Hewitt, to please join me on stage for our keynote address. Mr. Ajay Soni's expertise lies in organizational effectiveness and human resources strategy and increasing growth through innovation. He has 22 years of experience in human resources, encompassing both internal business partnerships and consulting roles. Ajay has offered consulting services to over 150 organizations in the areas of large-scale change management, organizational restructuring, visioning, high-performance workforce, and HR effectiveness projects. He has also been involved with top-notch companies for studies on leadership for many years now, and is currently leading the study for the Asia-Pacific region. He is a B.Tech, Mechanical Engineering, and he did his Masters in Business Administration from IIM Ahmedabad. Over to you for the keynote session.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Dr. Chaturvedi. Today I wanted to, as I was coming in, Mr. K.K. Sinha, who's been actually the thinker of this entire process, he reminded me that this is the 11th such conference we are doing. And so my memory went back to 3 years back, when I was traveling in Gurgaon on a car, and Mr. Sinha called me, and he said that, Ajay, we want to do something, some kind of conference, we want to, give back to the industry, something in the area of HR. So, what do you think you should be doing? I was at that time just finishing research that we conduct, which we call as Top Company for Leaders. And so my mind was very fresh with leadership stuff. And so I said, something about leadership. And he said, what do you think? And I said, art and science of leadership. So, sir, I got reminded of that. So thank you for giving us an opportunity to be partnering with you on this journey. So we've done 10 such conferences. The other thing again was on 4th of December when Delhi was going on elections. Again, we got together at Bintech in Noida to take stock of where we are. We've talked about many different sub-themes here. What you see here written as Leadership the India Way. In other conferences, it has been said succession planning, leadership brand, careers, and many other aspects that are there as a part of leadership. So many topics we've covered, and what should we talk about next? And I said, you know what, we need to be global leaders, and why don't we talk about global leaders? Or diversity is becoming a very important aspect of leadership, and why not diversity and innovation? And Ajay, all this is bunka. We are Indians, and we need to talk about the India way of leadership. I said, no, it doesn't. This is old, done, nothing new. But let's keep going. But Mr. Sinha wouldn't let go of it for half an hour. He kept coming back and saying, we would go somewhere else, and then he would come back and say, India leadership way. And so then I saw the light. So thank you, sir, for the second time. On both, what is written over there is because of Mr. Sinha. So thanks for that. We have also corrected ourselves. We've done 10 such conferences, almost 3 years now. We've never come to Pune, right? So we've corrected that. We are very glad to be with all of you, and thank you for being here. Just before I got in here, we were doing a small chit chat. Mr. Kamal Singh was there, and he was mentioning about a recent, very elite thought leader who came into Pune, and there was a presentation by him, which was without any PowerPoint. To compensate for that, I'm going to have a PowerPoint. PowerPoint is going to be one slide, but you will see that at the end. Before that, there are 24 slides. So with that, I'd like to start. What I have done here, because we were so passionate about it, by the end of the day, when we ended, clearly Arvind Kejriwal had won the Delhi election. We didn't know at that time, but also we were sold on this theme. And so I was so excited that we went in 6 weeks. Then I've been thinking about this, and I've been working on this. And this, every word that you see here is brand new. This is nothing has been recycled. We looked at the secondary research. We looked at primary research that AOPUIT does, which is both top company for leaders as well as best employers. And we came up basis that with this. So pardon me if some of this looks data heavy, but we did want to make a point and share what we've learned over the past 6 weeks from this research. What I'm going to do is, first of all, we are going to talk about what is India culture and what is the leadership attributes that constitute leaders here. Those are two aspects that I'll cover. And then go into what are the business leadership attributes, business challenges, and therefore what are the competencies and skills that are needed by Indian leaders, and again data backed, I'll share that. Then to create those competencies and skills, what is the leadership strategy what are salient features of leadership strategy that companies are adopting? So I'm going to share that. How do companies assess top leaders and develop top leaders? How do companies identify through assessment high potentials, and how do companies, after identifying high potentials, develop high potentials? And then finally, the last slide, one slide, which puts all that together, is what I'm going to share. Before I go in there, wanted to just spend a minute on the two researches that I'm referring to here, the primary researches. Secondary research I'll mention separately. The first one is Aon Hewitt Top Company for Leaders study. We have been doing this study for 13 years across the globe, across Asia Pacific, and in India. So for 13, we have longitudinal data of 13 years, so there is a lot of insights that we are able to develop on that. This study, you all can participate in. We launched this study day before yesterday in Delhi. You all can participate in this study. If you want to know how to create a very robust leadership pipeline and very robust leadership, effective leadership at the top, then you can participate in this study. And you will be able to benchmark your practices with best companies in the country. You will be able to see which are practices you are good at, which are the practices you need to improve upon, whether it is succession, whether it is high potential identification, whether it is development, whether it is on diversity in leadership team, innovation, and so on and so forth. So this study, in this study with each organization that participates, we will go to human resource head, we will go to some of the business leaders and CEOs. We will be meeting each of these three entities, very robust study. The second study that we are also launching now, and which we launched day before yesterday, is called Best Employer Study. And this looks at not only leadership practices, but all HR practices, from recruitment to compensation, rewards, recognition, all HR practices. And then if you want to create a highly engaged workforce, and what are the inputs you get inputs from here. We are launched both of these studies, and there are some flyers that are there in the material that you've got also on your table. So I would urge all of you to participate in those, so that the next time we come back we have richer data, we have newer data, and then we can throw back newer things at you. I was discussing with all the panelists just before we came in here, and we said, India is so many countries. We are one country, 6 religions, 7 union territories, 28 states, 22 official languages, and 4,000 years of history. It's not one country, it's like, many countries put together. And therefore, there are a huge amount of complexities that exist in India. And therefore, it becomes very important to say what distills out, and what is that common thing from a leadership perspective that binds us together. First thing, as I promised to you, is what we looked at was Hofstede cultural dimensions, and there are, according to Hofstede, 6 dimensions of culture. Power distance, which means some societies are more unequal than others. So are we very equal amongst ourselves, or are we, do we have distance between us? Individualism. Strength of ties people have to others in the community. Are we individualistic? We want stuff for ourselves, or do we want the community to grow? And where are we on that spectrum? Masculinity is, there is masculine and feminine that you will see when I show the data to you. But what it means is, are you very competitive, which means very directive, and you are sure this is the way to go? Or do you build consensus? Moving forward, societies, tolerance, uncertainty, avoidance. How much of uncertainty you want to avoid? And that really shows the tolerance for ambiguity. And finally, long-term orientation versus short-term orientation. Choices of focus for society's effort. Do you have a long memory? Do you keep remembering that there was a partition that happened? Or you've just gotten over it? So, what is a long memory? And when you are looking at future, are you looking at tomorrow and the next quarter? Or are you looking at 5 years from now. So those are 5 dimensions. And I wanted to talk about these 5 dimensions. Therefore, what I did was this had 500 countries in this research. So what I thought was, let me take China, let me take US, and we are somewhere stuck in the middle. So let's take those 3, India, China, and stuck in the middle reminds me, I was at IIM Ahmedabad, and we had some very witty professors, and one of them was pretty upset with all the analysis that we had done. He said, this is rubbish. And so he said, you know what, IIM Ahmedabad in Vastrapur. Ahmedabad is, on one side is blind school, and the other side is physically handicapped people. So he said, you know what, on one side of our institute are blind people, on the other side are lame, and we are somewhere in the middle. One-eyed students and who can't walk properly, that's what he meant. But India is in the middle of China, USA from geography perspective, so I thought let's take those examples. The first one is long and short-term orientation. And if you see, the yellow one, US, is very high. US is, no, this is, the first one is China. So China is looking at a very high number. They couldn't have scored more than 120, and they are at 180. So they're looking at very, very long term. Anything that you do, and it rhymes very well. My Chinese colleagues are always planning. You tell them something to do, which needs to be done in 2 months, for a month they will be planning, and then they will get into that. So there is that long term orientation. If you look at US, it's 29. So it's quarter on quarter profit. You need to deliver results and all of that. But somewhere we are in the middle of it. There is a balance that we do between short and long term. On masculinity and femininity, while there is a bunching, China is a masculine society relatively, and so is US, and we are less than that. And what that means really is, if it was, the score was about 100, then we may have been very competitive. We are not that directive. We are between competitive and consensus. We are somewhere in the middle. We will take one or the other depending on the situation. Individual versus collectivism. China is very, very collective, right? You can see the score 20. It could have been 120. If you look at US, it's at 90, which is completely individual. And again, emphasis is on collective in India, much less than the halfway point, 60. So there is emphasis on collectivism. And therefore, people are more motivated not by monetary rewards, they are motivated more by intrinsic rewards. This is borne out by our best employer research, which shows that though people are not happy with the compensation, it doesn't impact engagement too much. So can you work on intrinsic motivation, and that becomes very important. And so that's the Indian culture. And then uncertainty avoidance, we are pretty low on that. China is even more than that, but we are also pretty low on that. And therefore, we will accept ambiguity. And power distance, there are strong hierarchies. So we are pretty high on power distance. If you looked at Japan, the score would be at what range? Any thoughts? Japan power distance will be close to? Yeah, so 95. That is the highest in the world, is Japan. So very hierarchical. So given this, just to reiterate, balance between short and long term, balance between competitive and consensus, intrinsic rewards, acceptance of ambiguity and hierarchy. That's the summary. If we look at, then I went into another research, which is a globe, which was done in University of Pennsylvania. And they said there are 6 aspects of leadership, 6 dimensions. And let's look at where is India on that. And when we look at charismatic leadership, we're pretty high on that. So we look at inspire and to motivate. So that's what our leaders, effective leaders will be inspiring, will be motivating. Those kind of leaders are there. Team oriented, again pretty high on that, which means effective team management, team building is the measure of an effective leader. Humane, yes, a little on the lower side than the rest, but still supportive and considerate leadership. Participative also will involve others, but not much autonomous, so will not go off on his or her own, and not too much of self-protective. So those are the traits of Indian leaders as borne out by this research. Unfortunately, these researches, I'm referring to our Western researches, but I'll come to India data soon. As I said, culture, leadership attributes, and then I will come to business challenges. What I did was looked at now we are starting with top company for leaders data. So I looked at CEOs, global CEOs, all the world together, and Indian CEOs, what are they saying are the top business challenges? And these are in this order. Top three are same. If you look at the top three business challenges, it is about business growth, there or here. It is about margin pressures, there or here. It is about product and service innovation, there or here. But keep in mind, innovation is an important aspect from business challenge point of view. As we go along, we'll see whether it is showing itself as required leadership competencies or not, and skills or not. And interestingly, the number 5 business challenge, it's not, we didn't ask them about HR challenge, we asked them about business challenge. Number 5 business challenge is employee engagement. So Indian leaders are realizing, and probably it's also because of the culture we have, that which requires that humane touch, and therefore employee engagement is on the CEO agenda. So therefore keep in mind that when we talk about leadership competencies. So I'll move now to the third part and move to skill competencies first before skills. And in the competencies, given the growth expectations from India, the leaders are expected to have future view and strategic traction which the global leaders may not be required to have to that extent. So global leaders instead are, because the growth opportunities aren't that high, they are expected to focus on results. Can you get the results here and now? Quarter on quarter, and even that's even to an extent the America is. So deliver results, build teams, manage lead change, ensure accountability, and help people manage careers. How we are different? The dark ones that you see is the difference. The light ones are common. Deliver results, manage lead change. Those are common. The dark ones are different. So if you look at India, the future view and strategic traction are the two primary ones. So again, because we're going to grow, what is expected from leaders is take that long-term view. And therefore, where are we going to grow from? So that is the leadership competency. And what I wanted to do also, what we had asked our clients, and this is now HR had responded to us. Which competencies occur in your competency model? We had some 25 competencies, some 30 competencies. Most often used competencies I have listed here, 10 of these. And so going from point of view about future to help people manage career. These are 10 competencies that are required by, as said by HR, most. Now HR is also working on some of these competencies. We asked them, where is your organization developing these fundamental competencies on a scale? And we then said, from a reducing 4.75 to 4.5 and downwards on a scale of 5, how well are we doing on this? What came out was that on deliver results, there isn't that focus. It is an important competency, but it is not being built. HR departments are not looking at growing those competencies, though it is second most important competency. Similarly, create aligned direction and managing careers. Managing careers is very important from employee point of view. According to our best employer research, it is the most important engagement factor, careers. But we are not building the competence. It is very important, but it doesn't show on this one, which means it is not something HR is working on. So organization is not focusing on deliver result, creating aligned direction and careers. I come to skills. And in skills, what comes out is that in the world, these are the competencies that, these are the skills that HR wants in their leaders. And in India, these are the ones. The difference is only in global business experience versus vision and strategic thinking. So again, vision and strategic thinking is coming as a theme, a very important aspect. So India is not looking to provide exposure. Whatever statements are put in red, I have put to say, we are not doing it, we need to do it. And the statements are made in black are, yeah, we are doing it and that's the way India is. So ethical standards is a standard and practice which is not in the top 10 skill requirements in Indian companies at all. And given the kind of context, we've had 2G scam and we've had coal and all of that, we need to be worried about this. And so I would say we need to have this kind of a skill also coming, how to create ethical standards and practice in our organization. That's an important skill for leaders to have. It's currently missing from the horizon. Again, I wanted to look at skills, which are the important skills on this side. And is HR working on those skills on this side? HR is not working on innovation and is not working on outstanding customer relationships. It is second and third most important skill. But human resource is not working on that. So therefore, in summary, what have I said so far? Because I know there is a lot of data I've shared. In summary, what I've said so far is, culture is short and long-term balance, comparative and consensus balance, work for intrinsic rewards rather than monetary, acceptance of ambiguity, and strong hierarchies. That's the culture. Leadership dimensions which define Indian leaders. That's how we are built because of our childhood, because of our background. Inspire and motivate. Team orientation. These are the leaders who will be successful. I'm not saying these are the leaders India has, but these are the leaders who will be successful given the culture. Inspire and motivate, team oriented, participative and humane. So these are the leadership dimensions. And therefore competencies, and I've used a little bit of liberty here, I've put some competencies together. Participative, those leaders who are participative and inclusive will be successful. When they are creating a strategy, have they taken inputs from the last person standing? Inclusive, So, participative and inclusive, future focused, 3 years out, 10 years out, 20 years out, or are we business creating a sustainable business? That's what Tatas do, right? Very successfully. Lead and manage change, because this now where we've reached in our state of economy, the globally as well as in India, is a lot of change situation. Lead and manage change. Build teams, because individual brilliance can't do enough, and also because people want intrinsic rewards. Humane is the way to be successful. Team orientation, so therefore team building becomes important. And deliver results is again something that is important competency. I put a cross there because as I showed you in the earlier slide, that's not something that is being focused on. So watch out for it. Skills, visionary, innovation, customer relationship, attract and develop next generation leaders, and ethical standards and practices, the one that was missing. The crosses I put are, again, I should have put a cross on ethical standards and practices also. But innovation, customer relationship and ethical standards is something that we are not currently creating and we need to focus more on. But this is the India way that I am proposing, basis the research, both primary and the secondary that I have done. Having said this, as I said, I'll talk about the competencies and skills, but I'll also talk about leadership strategy, assessment and development. So I now come to the second part of the presentation, where I'm talking about top leadership strategy priorities. And the difference is, while there are three which is common, Globe is focusing on succession, we are also focusing on succession. Globe is focusing on leadership strategy, we are also doing that. Strengthening leadership competencies in senior leaders, very important, we are also doing that. However, retaining top talent and recruiting top talent is the issue there. Here the issue is high potential identification. Probably we are in a state before developed economies, where they have done this piece, and therefore they are focusing more on retaining those people. We need to define that system process. And diversity, we are saying, is a very important aspect for us. In the next slide you will see we are not doing much about it. But diversity, as told to us by HR people across 100 companies that we did this, diversity is an important part of leadership strategy. Are we having diversity? Wipro is doing that, HUL is doing that, are we doing that? So, I go to the next one. Also within a leadership strategy, we also asked, how do you measure success of leadership strategy? How do you measure that? So we were told, across the globe, and we are pretty much similar, and which is that we look at promotion rate of hypo, high potential turnover, performance rating, percentage of hypos placed in senior management, and percentage of hypos who move into critical success. Globe looks at diversity of high potential pool. The most commonly used is percentage of women leaders. But it could also be engineers versus non-engineers. For us, it could be South Indians, and do we have preponderance of them, or we have, Gujaratis or whatever. Whichever way we define diversity. In India, that is not a metric that is being measured by CEOs or HR. And we need to do that. We need to take cognizance of that. We move to high potential. So leadership strategy I'm done with. Now I'm coming to high potential assessment and development. So high potential identification process, we asked how are you doing it? It is being done basis performance rating, which is important, and then few other things, including 360, which is again very high preponderance of using 360, so that you can measure your competencies of your organization, and also other competency-based assessment. So mix of performance and competency-based assessment is what India is doing, and actually absolutely similar to what US or global is doing. On how do we develop high potentials? We develop by giving developmental assignments, special projects, exposure, capability. Mentoring is a difference. Before we sat here, I was sitting with all the panelists, and one of the things that was being said was, I think Chetan, that was you, which was that, how we grow leaders is by very close proximity of leader and the future leader, which is mentoring, right? Whether it is formal or informal. So we use mentoring in a big way, and of course rotational assignments also we do. Moving forward, selection processes to promote leaders. Now we're talking about top leaders. For promoting top leaders, we use behavioral interviews, personality assessment, career interest inventories, and value inventory. So value-based leadership is an important selection process for senior leaders. But we are not doing customized leadership competency-wise assessment. So we are not doing any personality test, this personality, interest of that individual, value inventory, but nothing of this kind, which is saying on my company's competencies, how is the person? We are not doing anything there. And these are critical decisions we are taking of promoting senior leaders to top leadership positions. And so we need to take cognizance of that. Does the leader have the leadership DNA of my organization? Assessment of leadership performance. How do we assess top leader performance? Achieving objectives, demonstrating company vision, financial performance, developing, generating talent, employee engagement. However, interestingly in Globe, the second most thing is achieving objective, and then how the objective were achieved. That is missing for us. We are not looking at the how part, we are looking at more the objective part. So we need to look at that and see how can we inculcate in that our company. And then development process for top leadership is rotational assignment and special projects is something that we are doing. We are not doing global assignments. So especially in an integrated world where our managers and our leaders will need to go out into the world, we are not creating that global leadership probably, and I open in the panel we'll discuss this. Also, even if we don't go, are we creating global leaders if we don't move them around, even if they are only in India? But if we don't move them around and let them see the world, would we have global leaders who are based in India? So that's a missing piece. And that's what I come to the last slide, which is what I said. This presentation is only about one slide. As I said, cultural aspects, I had reiterated to you, there are 5. Short and long-term balance, comparative and consensus balance, work for intrinsic rewards, accepting of ambiguity, and strong hierarchies. These are 5 cultural aspects. Inspire and motivate, team orientation, participative, and humane. These are the 4 aspects of leadership. Business challenge, interestingly, growth, margin pressure, those were the business challenges, and competitive marketplace, but employee engagement is a business challenge, right? Just reiterate. Therefore, this was the model I talked about. Competencies, participative and inclusive, future focused, lead and manage change, build teams, and deliver results. We're currently not focusing on deliver results. Skills, visionary, innovation, customer relationship, attract and develop next-gen leaders, ethical standard and practices. We're not focusing currently on ethical standard practices, customer relationship, and innovation. We need to focus more on that. Having said that, on strategy we said, high potential, we have that as a priority. All companies are saying that. But diversity agenda is the other missing piece there. We are not doing that. Though it is a required strategy, we are not acting on it. Top leaders, assessment and development. Performance management system should include the how part. Currently it is missing. Assessment of values is being done, but competencies is missing currently for senior leaders. In development, we are doing rotation, we are doing projects, executive coaching, and board exposure to board. Many companies are doing that, but global exposure is missing. And high potential assessment is being done both basis performance as well as competencies. The learning is primarily experiential, and mentoring and coaching is something that is significantly focused on. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's what I had, and I'd like to just end with this quote from Mr. Narayan Murthy, where he says, "Leadership is an action, not word. Build a climate of honesty, hard work, and excellence. Build a social conscious and benchmark yourself the best in the world. Be honest and true to the profession, and act fearlessly."
Will bring out the various perspectives on leadership the India way. As Western economies struggle to recover from the global recession, India's multitudes earned it a place alongside China as one of the world's two indispensable emerging markets. With increasing confidence, CEOs of India's leading companies are venturing overseas, making headlines with high-profile acquisitions such as Tata Group's purchase of Jaguar and Land Rover, or Bharti Airtel's acquisition of Zen's African telecommunications business. Indian software giants like TCS, Wipro and Infosys have emerged as global technology leaders. Indian companies are thriving in other key sectors as well, such as pharmaceuticals, petrochemicals and steel, demonstrating a capacity for efficiency and innovation that is changing the global competitive landscape. So what perspective do our panelists have to share, bearing in mind the peculiarities of the Indian business? To discuss this at length, I take the opportunity to invite once again Mr. Ajay Soni, our moderator for the session, on stage please. I will also like to call upon the panelists for this session in alphabetical order. I request Ms. Anjali Bais to please take her seat on the dais. Ms. Anjali Bais is currently Director HR at SKF India Limited. She is an alumnus of Lady Shri Ram College, Delhi, and has completed her Masters in Applied Psychology from Delhi University. She obtained her PG HRD from Symbiosis Center for HRD, Pune, and has an advanced certificate in marketing from Chartered Institute of Marketing, UK. She has varied experience in manufacturing, insurance, and R&D companies, having worked with Tata Motors, Bajaj Allianz Life Insurance Company, Cummins, and Thermax. She has handled multiple functional excellence areas, including strategic HR, industrial relations, organization development, learning and development, Six Sigma, corporate responsibility, health, safety and environment, and administration. Her significant contributions include multiple business partnership programs, implementation of culture-based HR strategy, capability building, Six Sigma, and diversity initiatives. She has also championed multiple change management programs and is currently the president of the Pune chapter of NHRDN as well. Thank you very much for being with us today. I next invite Mr. Bobby Kodiakose on the panel. Mr. Bobby Kodiakose is currently Director HR and Learning and Development at the Forbes Marshall Group, Pune. He has been with the group for over 22 years. The group has won several awards for best HR practices in 2005, 2008, 2011, 2012, and even as recent as 2013. Forbes Marshall has been recognized amongst the top great places to work in India, according to a survey conducted by Great Place to Work Institute and Economic Times. Congratulations, sir. In fact, in 2013, the company has been ranked 5th among the 535 companies which registered for the study. Forbes Marshall has also in the past won the award for strong commitment to HR excellence based on the audit conducted by CII's HR excellence model. He is an alumnus of Symbiosis Institute of Business Management, Pune, and ISB Hyderabad. He is also a certified coach associated with International Coaches Federation. It is indeed an honor to have you with us today. I now invite Mr. Chetan Tolia to join the panel members on the dais. Mr. Chetan Tolia joined Tata Power in September 2012 and is the Chief HR Officer of the company. Before joining Tata Power, he was the Director of Tata Management Training Center, Pune for over 4 years. Previously, he was the CEO of Tata BlueScope Steel Limited and led the formation of the 50-50 joint venture between BlueScope Steel and Tata Steel and developing its building solutions and coated steel businesses. Prior to that, he headed the strategy and planning department at Tata Steel, where he led the development of Tata Steel's growth strategy and was responsible for anchoring the strategic planning processes. Earlier, he led the Pune business unit of Tata Ryerson Limited. Having studied at IIT Madras and IIM Calcutta, he joined Tata Steel in 1987, where his experience ranged from customer relationship management, sales, marketing, market planning, project management, and marketing. Glad to have you on the panel today, sir. I now take the opportunity to invite Mr. Gajendra Chandel to join the panel. Mr. Gajendra Chandel, President and Head Human Resources, Tata Autocom Systems Limited, holds a postgraduate diploma in management. He also holds a master's degree in public administration and a postgraduate diploma in labor laws. He joined Tata Autocom Group in July 2005 and since then has been actively involved in all strategic growth initiatives of the company, including the company's turnaround in 2008-9. Mr. Chandel also drives a corporate sustainability program at Tata Autocom and is the Chief Ethics Officer. He is also a director on the board of 4 of the joint venture companies of the group. Prior to joining Tata Autocom, he worked with Siemens in India, Germany, and the US for almost 13 years. His last assignment at Siemens was heading the Siemens One project in India, implementing HR shared services, which he led till July 2005 before joining Tata Autocom Systems Limited. Mr. Chandel is an active member of several industry bodies and associations and has held various positions. He has been the Vice President of the Delhi chapter of National HRD Network and was awarded Leader of the Year by Leadership Management Incorporated USA in 1997. Delighted to have you with us today. Last but not the least, I invite Mr. Vinod Chaturvedi to join the panel here. Ladies and gentlemen, hold your breath for the number of adjectives I am now going to read out to you. Mr. Vinod Chaturvedi is a focused, result-oriented, self-motivated, stable, value-driven professional having more than 27 years rich experience. He has worked in the best of organizations of the country in their varied businesses at corporate as well as business roles, handling strategic, tactical and operational HR, providing jump shift focus to business results, concentrating on all functional strategies and objectives. He has demonstrated capability to build organization culture, competence and commitment so as to be an enabler and partner in achieving business objectives for long-term sustenance through deploying excellence models such as business process reengineering, TPM, TQM, Quality Circle and Six Sigma. He has worked with mega companies like Reliance Communications and Reliance SEC, Viraj Profiles and Aditya Birla Group in various businesses where currently he is working as National Head HR, Cement Manufacturing with Ultratech Cement, Aditya Birla Group. Welcome to the panel, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, it's going to be an extremely captivating evening with this power-packed panel here. I now hand over the session to the moderator, Mr. Ajay Soni, for further discussions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It will be a great pleasure to be here with my esteemed panel. On this table, probably the cumulative experience is about 150 years. So I'm sure there are lots of pearls of wisdom out here. And so, you will all be at the receiving end of that. I hope you guys have fun. There is no better fun than a good fight. So I will start by requesting each of you to say one thing about the presentation that I made. And preferably something that you didn't like or didn't agree with. So as I said, nothing in boring jobs is a good fight. So.
Don't you think, Ajay, that whatever you described, so why did you do all that long exercise of going to so many companies.
That's waste of resources. I fully agree. But anybody would like to share, one thing, hopefully you disagreed with, but if not that, then what you agree with?
Definitely ready to pick a fight with you.
Good.
I was very intrigued by the fact that your research showed relatively lesser focus on innovation. And the reason I want to pick a fight with you on that one is you ask anybody overseas some Indian words, so they would definitely know it. Like, your karma, people know. Guru, people know. But one other word that they know is jugaad. I think you could go anywhere and say jugaad and they would get it. And that is innovation. I agree that it is not sustainable innovation, and that's something that we want to work on. But I would shy away from saying that we don't focus enough on innovation. I think we do it naturally. I think all of us have seen enough and more jugaad as you pass through cities. All kinds of tall ladders fitting on a cycle with 3 people and a bucket and a paint. And that's jugaad. So I think there's enough and more innovation all over life, and I agree it's not sustainable, and that's what we need to do, make it sustainable. So that was my 2 cents on it.
Oh, great. Thank you. Bobby?
Ajay, one specific thing which I thought, you mentioned about organizations not focusing on value as a competency, and there is not much of a focus which is being given while evaluating leadership. In today's world, I have seen a lot of trends in many organizations which I have interacted with, where value is being considered as a part of the competency processes. Even in our own organization, I have a set of technical competencies, a set of behavioral competencies, and the organizational values are considered to be the 3rd set of competencies which we evaluate on a regular basis. So that's something which came as a little bit of a surprise to me, that whether it may be an aspect with most of the organizations that they are yet starting to focus on it, but quite a few number of good organizations have started focusing on it already.
Great. Vinod, you were itching to say something.
You presented that HR department is not concentrating on deliver results. I think they are working very closely with the CEOs, and in all the companies, I have worked 3, 4, and interacting with most of the HR professionals. Most of the times the delivery comes from the people, and the list of those people are always on the CEO's table. And HR, and it is on the tips with the HR. So deliver results is one thing. And I would tell this in Indian context, that since we as Asian race or an Indian race, we are very good in delivering results. What Anjali said, that we are very good in jugaad. Right. And second is that we are able to manage ambiguity. By any condition, we get the things done. And it's in our culture. We never return empty-handed. We always do something. So that's culturally that is there, and we are respected by that, by our CEOs and the HR department. So it's a competence which is getting developed.
Most, if not all, Indian companies, and to call ourselves engaged with employees cannot be achieved without an absolute sharp focus on safety. And this is one area which really needs to change in India.
So that's missing currently.
It's missing both from the presentation and India.
Vijay?
I think what actually Chetan and Vinod, also Bobby mentioned. One of the aspects, you mentioned that in your presentation, is being humane. I think, and in my experience, having lived in some of the countries.
You guys are not living up to that humaneness at all. I mean, you are clearing my research of 6 weeks into, right?
But you should realize that we are, even if we are inhuman, you think, but we are trying to do it in a human manner, humane manner. And that's what I am trying to tell you. That having lived in some of the countries outside and having worked with the HR departments there, I realized that the people there generally, and it is also to do with the cultural aspect or the societies that are there, they're very clinical. Whereas in India, we try to bring a human face to everything. In our organization, for example, we are trying to implement what is called as MOST, Maynard Operation Sequence. This is the productivity on the shop floor. Who is driving it? It's supposed to be driven by the operations head. But it's being driven by HR because it's a mindset issue. It's a cultural issue. Whereas if you look at this kind of thing to be done in countries in Europe or US, etc., it will be driven purely by the manufacturing people, operations people. Because unless and until here you take people on board, they buy that aspect mentally. In their hearts, they believe that this is to be done, then only they will do it. There, you just issue a faceless memo or an email and it will be done. So I think there is a difference in the way people treat people in those societies vis-a-vis in India. I think that aspect is very vividly different in my understanding between the Western societies or some of the countries that I have seen vis-a-vis India. And that makes a lot of difference towards how the results are achieved and when those results are achieved, whether in India or outside India.
Right. Great, thank you. We have about an hour to go, and now we will only talk about the things that you agreed with in the presentation. Okay, so one of the things that I started off with in the middle, I talked about the business challenges. In your words, and I would open it up to anybody, what are the business challenges which are facing our corporate India today, and how are they shaping the Indian leaders? Anybody? Yeah.
I would broadly divide the challenges into 3 dimensions or 3 perspectives. The first, of course, is what we talk about the most, the environment around us, the economic environment, and nowadays the big favorite set of acronyms has become VUCA. You read it just about everywhere, volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And while this is something that's talked about at a global level, I think when you look at the Indian ecosystem, this becomes even more prominent or predominant. If you pick even one, so say ambiguity or uncertainty in another word, even when you step out, there is so much uncertainty. It's not like everybody is driving in the same set of lanes. So now you translate that into an economic environment and business, and it gets even more complex. So I would say one is on that dimension. The other is really from the customer's perspective. The demands are changing dramatically. There was a point in time when we all talked about competitive advantage, and nowadays nobody really talks about that one competitive advantage. You need to have many competitive advantages that you sell, which you finally, at an umbrella level, define as value add. So I don't think we any longer talk about competitive advantage. We did that in MBA way back in college, and now it's more about definitive advantage or value add. And the third perspective I think I'd put on the table is partnerships. So I saw in your slides, Ajay, we were talking about business growth, top line, bottom line, all of that being, big things that are on the minds of CEOs. I was intrigued not to find partnerships there, because I think that's something that I see happening a ton of, and I mean both at the start of the value chain, suppliers, at the end of it, which is dealers, distributors, going all the way down to the customers. So I think partnerships and being able to cater to so many different, each one being uniquely different requirements is another big challenge that I see being faced by businesses. So I would basically put on the table these three perspectives in terms of the changing landscape for us.
Perfect.
And if you look at it from the point of view of any organization today, one of the most important challenges the business community is facing is improving the employee value add. More from the point of view of the organization's basic value added per employee. And when you look at it, it's better said than done. That more painfully, most of the organizations are now realizing that it's the employee which indeed is the most important asset. Till now, it used to remain in the balance sheets and some of the other records and reports, what we used to say. But the painful realization has really come in. That's why the fraternity which is sitting here, the HR fraternity, is getting so much of importance. But one specific area where there is a big challenge is with respect to having the right leadership. People with right leadership is having an acute shortage in that scenario. And if you speak to any of the CEOs, they will always talk to you. One of their major concerns is with respect to the managerial bandwidth which is existing in their own organization and how do they go about it. And the managers who are already there or the leaders who are already there, there is an extreme high level of expectation on them to be multifaceted leaders with the new generation, especially the Gen Y who have come into force. And this Gen Y's demand, who are extremely articulate, very clear on their responses. They are extremely clear with respect to the time the leaders need, the face time, I repeat, the face time the leaders need to spend with them, and relatively a lower level of loyalty, which needs a conscious effort to bring in. And the last part, which is the most critical one, the level of engagement. And whenever you discuss about an engagement, even though you hear a lot many of definitions on engagement, basically it has to just answer three simple questions. Any human being working or a professional working in any organization will have three questions. What do I get? First one. What do I keep? Second one, do I belong? And if we are in a position to answer these three specific questions from an organization's engagement perspective, then the rest of the job is done. And it's extremely important for organizations in this competitive times to go back to basics, because turbulent times always, people say go back to basics and look at the culture and ensure the right culture and not focus much on business, because if you have the right culture, then the right business will naturally follow, because you will have the right kind of people. This is what I thought I should add.
There's a book written on that, isn't it? Culture Eats Strategy for Breakfast. Yeah. Okay. Chetan, now you have to go next.
Okay. Looking at business challenges, we need to focus on the kind of context we live in India today. Because the context shapes many things, and it also throws up the challenges that exist in our midst. As a country, most of our GDP growth, and I would say even our GDP itself, is fueled by domestic consumption. So our Indian businesses live in a comfort zone of happily selling to Indian customers. And the biggest challenge from that external perspective, the global external perspective, is brand India itself. Brand India is actually a very big challenge that Indian businesses together need to think about, and I dare say this does not appear to be on the agenda of any collective body of business enterprises. Let me come to the next one, which is really a internal to India kind of a challenge. And this is about inclusive growth. The second big challenge that Indian businesses are facing today, and I would say will face even more in the coming years, is inclusive growth. How do we make our growth inclusive and make the benefits of our growth reach populations of India which have not yet seen any difference in their standards of living? I'd say the third, and this is my last, the third business challenge that we live with today is we are resource crunched. Indian business today is resource crunched to an extent where today we are unable to, as a society, invest in the development of a future generation of leaders. And the only statistic that I have to back this up with is the performance of young graduate students in seeking jobs. It has declined year after year, and the businesses and the companies feel happy that, look, we are not able to grow our business, so we will not recruit. A fair statement. But the long-term damage this will do to India and future leaders in India, and therefore our own companies, is huge. And we don't have any idea of the size of this problem yet.
Okay. Gajendra, I'd like to change the question a bit. We've, in this so far, three panelists, we've talked about the challenges. So the challenges were with regard to customer definitive advantage, rather than competitive. We talked about partnerships and need for that. We can't do everything alone. We need partners. We talked about the right leadership and requirement and the managerial bandwidth. And then we talked about Generation Y. We talked about context, which is that it's primarily, it used to be domestic market, the Indian brand itself, which is a challenge. Inclusive growth has to be there, and then the resource crunch. Of course, the resource crunch reminds me of what Manoj Kohli of Bharti I heard once say, which is that our model of growth is low resources, high success. But we can discuss that some other time. So those are the challenges. So what do you think, how those challenges in past 5-6 years have shaped the kind of leadership you've seen emerge?
Yeah, I think this is almost like what Chetan was also mentioning, that there are resources. It's not that the resources are not there. In any form, whether it is human resources, it is capital, it is technology or whatever. But I think it is more in the raw material form than in the form that it can be given the final finishes or finishing touch. And therefore what Chetan mentioned, that down the couple of years, we will have a question actually staring at us. What did you do then that there are no, or there are inadequate leaders today? And that question we will have to face just few years down the line, because leadership is not only about the CEO, it's at multiple levels in the organization. Normally when we talk of leaders, we talk of only the CEO, but that's not the case. Unless and until the pipeline is built from entry level till the top level, and that pipeline is strong enough, I think we won't have the leaders at the top level very soon. That is one. Second is that these people or leaders are not prepared or have not been prepared by the organizations because of the context of the past 15-20 years, that we are able to build leaders for tomorrow. We have not done that. Because what we see today is very different, or last 5-6 years that you asked this question, is very different from what it was, say, from early 90s when India opened up, prior to that, and till say 2005-6, when everything was going up only. And then the wild fluctuations started happening in the Indian economy. The leaders are not prepared to handle that kind of wild fluctuations. And therefore, what happens is, when the economy starts going up, everybody starts investing like mad. You start putting up plants, machineries, etc., and then it goes down, and then everything stops. We do not take the long-term view, and for building leadership and a strong leadership pipeline over a period of time, it can never be short-term. It has always to be medium and long-term. We started in our company, for example, an integrated program where the CEOs, the function heads in the JVs, business units that we have, the plant heads go through a certain kind of program. Initially, everybody said, why are we doing that? Including the senior leadership team was not very convinced that why should we invest, and this is happening in the last couple of months when the economy is really going down, especially the industry that I come from, automotive, is severely hit. Almost all the companies are either flat or they are negative 5, 10, 20% kind of numbers that they have over the previous year. And then everybody starts thinking of conserving the resources. Yeah? All of a sudden, what was a virtue becomes a big issue. Yeah? And everybody says cash is the king, so please put everything into the bank. You collect money, put it in the bank. Don't invest anything. But I think that's not the kind of mindset which will be helped, because these wild fluctuations are not going to go away. They are going to be there more and more. Right. The CEOs today, or the management teams, or the CXOs who are part of the management team, face a very different situation as compared to what it was 5 to 7 years ago. And I remember when we used to run our career and succession planning exercise 5 years ago or 6 years ago as compared to what it is today. What is looked for in the talent for building leadership of the future, very different. So all the competency models that we all are expert at building have become almost redundant.
I have a question related to that. And in fact, I'm going to come to you, Chetan, about that. The picture you painted, which is of extreme amount of upheaval in the way the economy is, in the way the company is, and the fortunes go up and down. And so there is a lot of uncertainty with regard to economy, company performance, and all of that. Now, if you had a free hand and you could, suggest as to what kind of therefore leaders you need to develop over the next 3 years who will be able to overcome those kind of challenges, what would be those characteristics of leaders of tomorrow for India?
Such leaders would need to be connected even more strongly to the purpose of the enterprise. Firstly, such leaders would need to be strongly focused on why their enterprise has come into being or exists. And this reconnect to the purpose is going to be an even more important attribute as we wade through turbulent waters. So that's the first attribute that I'd like to talk about. The second one follows naturally from there, which is for these leaders to be able to take a long-term view. But I caveat that long-term view with one very important characteristic that leaders will need to exhibit more and more, and that is agility. Leaders will need to be agile, much more agile than they have been in the past. In the past we could get away with calling some of our leaders as having chauffeur-driven computers, which means that their secretaries used to use their computers. Okay? So they used to have chauffeur-driven computers. And such leaders will need to migrate from having chauffeur-driven computers to being very agile, adept, and learning technology as fast if not faster than the youngest recruits that they have in their organizations to be on the top of this changing game in the world. And the third thing, leaders, while they deliver to proven existing business models, will need to create the new business models for this country. For a very long time, India has utilized the business models that have been existing elsewhere. Probably the time has come where India will need to see a growth of new business models. Let me tell you why. If you were to look at the macroeconomic data over a period of time, the environment in India today resembles what was in the United States of America roughly between 1945 and 1965. It was an extremely fertile growth environment. Forget the minor blips that we might have. I am extremely optimistic about this country's future and demand. This environment is going to throw up a lot more turbulence, but in a very positive way. And that turbulence can actually be taken advantage of by agile leaders who are connected to the purpose, not merely the strategy of the organization.
So, Vinod, it's coming to you, and specifically one thing, if you can highlight how the future leaders can leverage that upheaval that is there, and therefore the opportunities that Chetan talked about. How can, what traits will help them leverage those opportunities?
Actually, to a leader, what we lack, we are very good as a firefighter at all levels except the top management. We are very good as firefighters. What happens that the skill of long-term planning doesn't get translated down the line, and that's why the leaders are not developed. And I'll share one experience, though we have started this at a middle level. The skill and competence transfer as a one-to-one discussion. What happens that our leaders are very knowledgeable, they have great sense of everything, that's why the businesses are growing. But if you talk of second line, they are not aware of that. They are busy in operations and day-to-day handling of issues. If the leader sits with them and transfer the skill and the competence in a structured manner, this can happen. And how this can happen? In a traditional manner, we say mentoring or whatever mentoring sessions. In this session, we are doing it at a middle level. What we term that who are the experts in their fields, we term them as Dronacharis. And we could find the gaps in the people, and they are the Arjuns in making. We align those Arjuns with drones, and structured meetings are happening. And as a result, engagement is happening as a byproduct, and skill transfer is also happening. So if this exercise happens, I think that this crisis of leadership creation can be solved. That's one point. Second is, our leaders are not experimenting the team exercise. We are very good as a team whenever there is a crisis situation. We team up very well and we solve the situation. But a sustained performance of a team, it doesn't happen in an organization. So team building, experimentation by leader, that's very important. And I think that faith has to be developed in CEOs that yes, teams can do better rather than these compartments in the organizations. That's the second need. And the third and the last is that whenever there is a crisis situation, because nowadays the cycle time of the business is very fast. There is a growth for 2 years, and 2 years the market goes down. At that point of time, they should have a trust that the activities like downsizing, etc., we should not concentrate on that. We should build competencies at that point of time, and then whenever the market scenario is very good, we will be the first man forward to capture the opportunity. So that trust among the team, creation of trust, which comes from our traditional culture, it should be practiced at that point of time. There is a theory that as the trust goes up, the speed of the action and performance goes up, and the cost naturally goes down. So we should practice that. These are the 3 things which CEOs practice. It can give dramatic results.
Yeah, Anjali, you had something.
I wanted to add, first of all, we can't be here in India talking about India way, being in a conference and not draw an analogy from cricket. Can we? So, I want to be sure to give a caveat here. So drawing from cricket, we all know that it's contextual in the sense that the pitch really determines how you bowl, right? For all of you enthusiasts, you would know that bowling is bowling is bowling, and you always show the face of the bat, all of that. But the bowling differs depending on the pitch. So in India, it's probably a lot more slow, and so you get a spin. But then when you're in other parts of the world, it's fast and there's a bounce. But there are some things that remain the same. The way you hold the bat, the rules remain the same. And so on. So likewise, I think in leadership, when you ask Ajay that, what do you think, new leaders need to be doing? I want to be sure that we don't lose sight of the fact that there are some things that remain the same. So like in cricket, there are some things that remain the same. And your ad says it's the leadership attributes. So it's values, integrity, being fair, being just, looking at taking people, all of those things remain constant. But having said all of that, to answer your specific point, which is really about the spin or the bounce. So where the pitch changes is really contextual. So for leaders, I agree 100% and more, if there's something like that, about agility. So that's a given. But I think the other thing that I'd like to also talk about is leaders of tomorrow working in such a demanding environment would also have to leverage strengths of people as they move along. So sometimes I think as leaders we get very focused on building the development areas of our team, which is good, we should do that. But also to be sure to leverage strengths, and I think that emerges really from being inclusive. You talked about diversity. And here I want to put on the table the point about diversity of thought, or the diversity of different ways of approaching problem solving, or the diversity of different ideas or perspectives on the same. Leaders who are able to take all of those with them and take it forward, I think are the ones who are going to be able to build creative solutions, because that's what we need. We need agility, we need speed, we want to be able to execute, and we want to be able to execute in a sustainable way. And all of that comes from really taking together the best, which is diversity of thought. And the third, I think, is to add to what some of my esteemed panelists said, is about action. I think sometimes in India we are so passionate and excited, we jump into action, and we jump into action really quick. And that sometimes is a good thing, but at sometimes, I don't know, maybe we could have planned a little better. And therefore the need to focus not just on strategy. We are great, all of us are great at building business cases, developing strategies. I think we managed to get a good nod very easily in the boardrooms. But it's the last mile, strategy execution. And I think leaders who are able to translate strategy into strategic execution at the last mile are the ones who are really going to sustain what you described as being really volatile and ups and downs. So I wanted to add to that question.
Yep.
We have been talking about Indian leaders being performance-driven, etc. Wherever and whenever we consider an organization as a sheer instrument to deliver performance, any engagement we do with that particular organization with people tends to be coming out from an acting upon paradigm rather than an acting with paradigm. And what we need to remember is, in India, we are so practiced to settling relationships first and then settling business issues. And in such kind of a situation, we also need to factor into three critical aspects. One is the role of families, not only at the business ownership level, where around 60% of Indian business is owned are family businesses, then we also need to have our own employees in organizations who come from a very engaged family atmosphere. And second, the emotional well-being, which is extremely critical from an Indian leadership or an individual's point of view. And third, the culture and ethos of our country, which is very strongly embedded within any human being who is coming into the organization. At the same time, you also have a positivity in that, wherein when you have a strongly embedded family culture and family orientation, or that affiliation towards being in a group, that can be one of the basic essence of creating sustaining relationships or engagement patterns which can help an organization to have people in the long-term perspective. So it has to be balanced and not go purely beyond performance and performance deliverables. The tools and techniques are available, but the basic human factor also needs to be taken into consideration when we look at a wholesome leadership from an Indian organization's point of view.
I think that's a great point, and if I may summarize that, what I believe that as is the emotional quotient, and very high emotional quotient. Two things come to my mind. I was with Chanda Kocher some time back, ICICI chairperson, and I asked her, what is it that leaders of tomorrow need, and what she mentioned was the softer aspect. The performance orientation is all fine, but how do you enable people? And that is a big requirement. Now, one of my colleagues met with Indira Nui, the chairperson of PepsiCo globally, and she said, leaders of tomorrow, what is it that they need? And interestingly, what she said was emotional quotient. To say, leaders of tomorrow need to be able to engage with the employees at large. That's a very important part. I know you're itching to say something, Rajendra, but before I go there, I just wanted to summarize so far where we've got. We talked about the environment around us, and we said environment is about, we need to have this, with regard to customer definitive advantage. We need to be talking about partnerships to service the customer. We need to have right leadership, which is correct in all sense of the word, and create managerial bandwidth. Leadership we need, which is able to manage the generation Y and their different kind of expectations. The domestic, we are coming from a context where domestic was the biggest market and may not be no longer true any longer as we go. Indian brand, that's another context in which we are operating. And so that is the context in which India is. Resource crunch is another one. Having said that, then we move to what are the traits for leaders of tomorrow, next 3 to 5 years, what is it that we need to focus on building? And interestingly, one of the points that Anjali you made was, foundation has to be there. The values, integrity, fairness, just kind of leaders, that is the foundation. And that's true for at any stage, 20 years back, 20 years forward, that is something that will be there. But talking about this environment of ambiguity, very important that the leader is connected to the purpose of enterprise. That's a skill, the competence that is required. Agility is required. Tech savvy, new business models, long-term planning. And you talked about the importance of planning itself. And then you talked about about the long-term planning, creating high-performance teams, and that being a competence. And then focus on not performance, but creating capability so that they can perform. And, focusing on that. Changing the bowling depending on pitch, but encouraging diversity, and finally high emotional connect. So that's where we've reached so far. I wanted to stop here and I'm going to pose one question to the panel, and we will answer that, post which in 5 to 7 minutes I will come to the audience for about 15 minutes. And so whatever questions you have in your mind, just write them down. But before that, there is one question for the panel, which is that from your experience, could you share what was the Indian way that you experienced as your growth of leadership, and your mentors or coaches applied that Indian way to grow and groom you, so that these competencies that you listed down, some of those got developed in you. So your personal experience of how somebody else grew you as leaders.
Let me address this, and we actually did some research at a place which is about 750 meters away from here, called Tata Management Training Center. Some of you might have been there in this room. So the Center for Creative Leadership, which is amongst the world's best leadership development institutions, and Tata Management Training Center, which is now about 55 years old and is probably India's oldest corporate learning center, teamed up to actually ask if there is an Indian way in developing leaders, and what is it that distinguishes this Indian way from other ways. And through this research, we spoke to about 400 successful Indian leaders and asked them two questions. The first question was, what events in your life have influenced the way you lead today? And the second question was, what did you learn from those events? And I happen to be a participant in that process, and amongst my answers were, and this is also borne out by the research, there are three major events which happen in the development of leaders, and they are special events like taking on challenging assignments, getting onto a new job, etc. But the second one, which is very, very particular about this generation of Indian leaders, is the influence of their boss or the influence of their super boss. And I would single that one out as one of the things that helped me in my own leadership journey so far. And I've had the pleasure and the joy of working with some renowned leaders in India in the Tata Group, and they include people like Muthuraman, Dr. Irani, Rusi Modi, Nirudkar from Tata Steel. They include people like Gopal Krishnan from Tata Sons and Kishore Chowkar from Tata Sons. So, the influence of a boss is one very large factor in my own development journey.
Terrific.
Two specific things happened in my development as a leader, which I have ensured have translated into my team as well. First and foremost, which I can say with 100% confidence that I was trusted, and an absolute trust that I can deliver. And today, I have a trust that my team can deliver, and I trust my team 100%. And the second part, which was also critical to me, was the tolerance that was there in the failure. Because if you need to be in an innovative organization, the best definition I have ever seen of an innovative organization is one which rewards success, tolerates failure, and punishes non-trial. And in my case, I have a great experience of undergoing a situation where whenever I used to make mistakes, my boss as well as my super boss, all of them used to be so tolerant to those kind of failures, which used to generate so much of confidence. And today, my own experience with my team, that they have absolute clarity with respect to anything which gets goofed up in their day-to-day operations, or even a critical incident, the news reaches me first. And then they are relatively clear that it gets taken care of. And these two kind of basic environment which was provided to me, I think helped me to be where I am today, and I'm almost certain that this is something which can go ahead and help me to be developing some more leaders within our organization or elsewhere.
Okay.
Thank you for asking this question, because I think if I sit here today and humbly talk about the topic of leadership, the credit definitely goes to others who have really invested in me and made me who I am. So I would, when you say what really shaped, so I'd answer it in two ways, because there are two sets of people I give credit to. So one, of course, my dad is my role model. He comes from the defense, and I think from childhood, it definitely instilled a couple of things. One is, he always says, if you don't do it, you don't know whether you can do it or you can't do it, so you just jolly well try and do it. And I think that has really set me to be experimentative, to try out, and like you said, yeah, you make mistakes, but what can go wrong? There's always an answer to every error that you make. And so you land up trying new things which in MBA we say innovative. But actually you just start questioning the status quo. And I think that is something that really drives change, which is what we're talking about. But having said all of this, India way, we at the end of the day operate in a global environment. Many of us, in some way or the other, are interacting with people from other cultures. And therefore, I also give credit to my mentor, who is not an Indian, he's from a different nationality. And I think that brings a different perspective as well, because it drives respect for differences of thought. It's a good sounding board to know if I say this, what could it get perceived as? Because at the end of the day, your perception is your reality. And so it's still worth me working on it if it's a perception I want to rectify. And so I think having a mentor as well from a different nationality has really shaped who I am. And I actually thank the two of them for making me who I am and the values that the family brings, which is really, this whole thing about fairness, integrity. The pitch I talked about changes, but then there is this whole foundation of the game that just doesn't change. And that whole thing about being fair, working with integrity, respecting diversity, I think has come from there. You could be working in any culture. We spend so much time doing these cross-cultural training programs, but there's one thing that irrespective of whether you know what a different culture defines a particular word to be or a particular action to be, if you're fair and if you've acted in integrity, that's commonly understood in any part of the world. And so your decision could never, ever go wrong. So I think those are things that have driven me to be where I am. And so thank you for asking that question, because I take this opportunity to thank all of them. My family, my dad, mom, and my mentor.
Thank you. That's very, very insightful, Anjali. Gajendra, your...
Yeah, I think it is not very different from what others have mentioned. And it is normal and typical in India to first thank the parents. Yeah, so my father also was in the armed forces, and therefore I have lived all over the country. I've lived in the east, in Assam. I started my career in Chennai, moved over to Delhi, worked in Bombay, now in Pune. And during the part of my career, I have lived outside India as well. So I think it is the exposure to multicultural environments. It's the upbringing of the family and the kind of schooling and education that I got. I have studied in the boarding school for most of my schooling. Apart from that, I think it is the trust that my seniors, my bosses, mentors had right from the time when I started my career. I think I handled nothing less than 11 or 12 different jobs in the first 2 years of my career. So, and this was a company in Chennai, and they had varied interests in varied industries. They had transportation business, they had leasing and hire purchase, they had tea, coffee and rubber estate. So I was asked to work in all those kinds of industries and different kinds of environments. Go there for 2 days and then I end up staying there for 20 days. Yeah, without realizing that when I was sent that it's not a 2 days job, but it's a 20 days job. In one of the branch offices, the branch manager was fired. I was a trainee that time. and the CEO calls up and says, you tonight please leave for Coimbatore and take over that branch office because that branch, there's something happened in the branch. Branch manager has been asked to go, so you go and take over tomorrow morning. I think it is those opportunities or those experiences which have shaped my whatever I have developed in my professional career. And the same thing happened. I was in Germany. I was sent for 5 years of deputation to work on certain projects in the global headquarters. As Indians would normally do it, har kaam jaldi mein. So I finished it in less than 3 years' time, and then I asked my boss, can I go to an operational unit because enough of a headquarter job. He said, okay, I'll try to work out, and then there was a project which came up to be sent to US, and that was a 1-year project. So I said, I'll go, no problem. So he said, then what do you want? After that, I want to go back to India. So I think it is the trust and it is the kind of waters that you are thrown in. And it's not that bosses always have trust in you. What can go wrong? Somebody else will do this job, let him do that job or let her do that job. Because at various points in time I have asked those managers or those bosses, why did you select me to go there, or why was I chosen to do that kind of project? They said, if somebody else could do it, you could also do it. And since you have the background of working in various kinds of industries, companies, countries, societies, so we said that why not we send you. And the kind of perspective that I was able to bring because of all that diverse experiences, I think that helped a lot in shaping my professional career.
Terrific, very insightful, Vinod.
Yes, Ajay, it's a very good question and I'm eager to speak on that, but I'll limit the time. The upbringing, yes, parents are there. Your friends, family friends, your wife. I think she makes a personality.
Everything I'm not sure. I hope NDTV plays that on the TV show.
So, the friends, the boyfriends, the girlfriends, and then the bosses.
That I wouldn't say.
I think, and they make the personality. And I must thank the bosses that they tolerate, at least they tolerated me.
My wife
Because so, my bosses, one of the bosses here, Professor K.K. Sinha, he has been my boss. I am working with Dr. Santosh Mishra. My present boss, Mr. Ratan Shah, Mr. Gautam Chenani. I would remember Mr. Satish Seth, yes, Mr. S.P. Shukla from Reliance. And these people, they have given me enough opportunity to perform. And I would say, for a leader, only one thing, that the degree to which the leaders are able to engage their subordinates, that's their success. And I would here state one thing. There are two categories in a company. There is an employee and there is an entrepreneur in a family-run businesses. The beauty of leadership is how many employees are converted into an entrepreneur employee. The person who is 24/7 mentally with you, thinks of company every time for its growth, for its everything. And that's the success of a leader. Creating an entrepreneur employee. He is not an entrepreneur, but his mind is an entrepreneur mind. And I usually say this, and I remember a couplet of Bhagavad Gita in chapter 9, and I narrate it most of the times. There is this couplet, the last part says, Yoga Kshemam Vahamyam. Most of the time we have seen it in LIC, your welfare is my responsibility. And from times immemorial, 4,000 years in our culture, we believed in that philosophy. And organizations nurtured that. Mera aadmi ye kahan se aayega, how he will travel, how the furniture loan, the car loan, these are all. We don't speak it, till today we don't speak on CTC terms. we still care for it. That what will be the HRA, whether he will be shifted, how we will compensate that. So I am stressing on that point that yes, your welfare is my responsibility, but there is a condition. There is a condition. The condition is sustained performance. That couplet goes, and it will take half a second. Ananyas chintayanto mam ye jana paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyam. This is the complete question. Is in chapter 9. And it says, even the God expects that when you will think of me continuously, then I'll take your responsibility of your welfare. And I say, in a company, if you will think of company that much, company will take care of your welfare. And that's engagement.
So, that reminds me of an interesting research I was doing. And I was doing this research on diversity and therefore women in leadership position and how is it that we can enhance that. And I came across this interesting concept, which a lot of you may have heard of it, which is called sponsorship. So all of us have heard about mentoring, and you talked about mentoring, and therefore you grow through mentoring, and it's as I shared a little while back, it's very widely used, mentoring in India. Very widely used, especially in the top companies. But this is about sponsorship, and sponsorship goes a step ahead of mentoring. It's being coined specifically to create a robust pipeline of women leaders. To say, I not only mentor this woman leader, but I actually sponsor. In a lot of ways, what you are saying, I know this person I'm mentoring and sponsoring has a sustained performance, has the potential, but we know by nature, and even that masculinity and the feminism that I talked about was because one is more about aggression, the other is softer, and the woman is not going to come and talk about her performance. And therefore you need a sponsor in the system who will do welfare and take that responsibility of the welfare. So in the modern practices, that sponsorship is what you actually very well articulated as actually foundation of our culture itself. So that was tremendous. So if I was to summarize what we just discussed in terms of how to build those futuristic competencies, I think pretty much three things we talked about. Number one, the trust that your leaders showed in you ensured that you became what you are become today. Second, you were given those opportunities which were very diverse. They were not related to your jobs. You did stuff which was impossible to achieve, but yet you tried, and those were diverse opportunities that were given to you, and therefore you succeeded. And third is not about them. The third is about you, that you took those risks. In 10 years, did 12 jobs, and that is the risk that you took every time, and that made you the leaders you are today. And so those, ladies and gentlemen, is summary of this part of the panel discussion. I will come to one last question for the panel, which is, I talked about how you got groomed, and now I'm going to pose that question to all of you, which is, what are you doing in your current or earlier organization which is innovative or creative or different to grow leaders of future? But I'll come to that in a minute, how you are doing that. Before that, I'll open up for 10 minutes to the audience as I had promised. And sir, you were giving me a big question. If you can start off with that question. Would you like to speak out, or we can pass the mics? Can somebody give the mic?
Sir, our friend, the head side, has already mentioned part of it, that if you train somebody, he becomes an entrepreneur. And he will compete. Please. There's nothing you can do about that. What I am doing is slightly lower level. If you train your employee, do well. Headhunters, take him away. Now, what are you to do with it? Do you train him only in a narrow slot? As I found in the 70s and 80s, I was in USA, and they were training people in the computer technology only for the narrow slot. in which their employee was actually working. They had big course, 3 top and 2 more lower down. But then did not want the training institute to teach him those 3 tops and 2 lower down, only that one specific out of the 6. They were restricted to that. Now, what you are mentioning is, this is a big, how shall I say, task, not an easy task, but still, if you have a very good company and are not very keen on making money, you get your employees trained to the full extent. Now, that is counterproductive, apparently. How do you manage that?
Can I take?
Oh, of course.
The specific question you asked, if you create entrepreneurs or if you create trained employees, then headhunters, some of them I can see them here, they pick them up. Being in Pune, who are the headhunters sitting over here. The best definition I have heard for an entrepreneur is like Roosevelt, who once said, the best entrepreneur is the one who chooses the right kind of people to do the right kind of job and do not meddle with them while they do it. And in organizations, whenever you have people taken, even the ones with extremely high entrepreneurial strength, the first part is taken care of to put them in the right kind of job to do the right kind of activities. But at the same time, the leaders do not engage with them to keep the space for them to perform. And when you meddle with an entrepreneur or someone with an entrepreneurial spirit who could be a future leader for you and meddle with him, it's like telling a runner that you go for the 400 meters run, but take part in the competition, but after every 100 meters come and report to me where you have reached. Those kind of things we tend to do in organizations. When you do that, you tend to lose those people whom you are training up to be entrepreneurs or leaders. And as Premji has said very clearly, in most of the times, people don't leave organizations, but they leave their bosses. And it's a course correction. If we as leaders, if we are in a position to do, then the organization would be a much better place for individuals to develop.
I have a question for the audience. I'm turning the tables. Tell me, which is the company you think has created most leaders in the country? Hindustan Unilever has created more than 500 CEOs, and it is one of the most successful FMCG companies in the country. Yes, sir. Okay, next question.
My question is to Mr. Chetan. In your opening speech, you made a mention about the leadership security. So, while making these comments, you mean to say the common's life or the worker's life is more precious than a company's profit? If that is the way, what should be the leadership approach to this leadership traits?
Let me repeat what I said in the opening. What I said was that most companies in India lack a focus on safety, not security. Safety is something that in India we don't worry very much about. It is something quite of a cultural trait in India, and this is something that we must worry about a lot. Safety hurts people, or lack of safety rather hurts people, and we don't want to run businesses to hurt people. That's the simple point that I was making.
Okay, so there on the first table, and I would request you to.
Yeah, in fact, that's exactly what I wanted to contribute rather than ask a question. Because I was waiting for the word defense to be used throughout this, panel discussion and your presentation. And I'm happy to know that Anjali and Gajendra, they have the defense background. All I wanted to say is not a question as such, but I think defense is the place for real leadership. We have to motivate our Jawans for supreme sacrifice. And let me assure you, it is not easy. So what do? we lead by personal example. Supposing I tell my Jawan, you shoot straight into the bull's eye. He will listen to me twice, thrice. Third time he is going to say, Saab, aap dikhao. Now that is the way we do it. And one more thing I would like to add here. Failure is not an option for us, which you people have the luxury of having failure as an option. And the last, the least I wanted to say was, I have an excellent film on leadership by none other than Field Marshal Sam Manekshaw. And anybody who contacts me, I will give it free of cost. Thanks.
I know you didn't ask the question, but I can't resist the temptation to give a response. And actually it aligns very closely to what Ajay asked the entire panelists as well. There is no doubt that a lot of the learnings and principles that are used in human resource management today have emerged over the years from defense. And it is across the world. You look at studies and theories that we use, they all emerge from the defense. For this panel, so I've been traveling a lot. I just arrived back in Pune an hour and a half before I arrived here for this panel discussion. And what were we doing? We were on a leadership offsite. And one of the things that we are striving to achieve is this whole thing about leading versus managing. And leading from the front. And there is no better way or place to learn it than from the battlefield. And we had Captain Akhilesh Saxena. He is, for those of you who tracked the Kargil War, he is one of our war heroes who captured Tiger Hill along with Vikram Batra. And he came to talk to our team about exactly this. And leading from the front, and the fact that the amount of risk-taking, the amount of setting personal example as leaders, the importance of action versus command, the ability to act irrespective of hierarchy, the ability to have such a belief in the uppermost motive that morale, how much do you pay the demands? He said, you guys talk about increments for motivating people. What if I gave you 1 crore, would you go and climb Tiger Hill knowing that the enemy is shooting and the cliff is 1 kilometer so straight? Would you ever do it? So I think there are a lot of lessons. And so I know you didn't ask a question, but you made a comment and he asked a question saying, what are the kinds of things that you do? So one of the things that we definitely strive to do, Ajay, is get learnings across industry, across specializations where leadership is demonstrated. Because the more we continue to look inwards, that's as good as we will be. But the more we look outside in, the more our learnings will be and the more agile and strong our leadership will be. So to answer your question, we actually do a lot to take learnings from the defense. So thank you. And thank you for your contribution. I know you've retired. I thank you for what you've done for the country.
Yes, sir. Sorry, can't hear you.
Sam Raidikar, Senior Director of Maratha Chamber of Commerce, Industry, Agriculture. Continuing with Vinod, he quoted from Bhagavad Gita, and what title we are given, the India Way. I will say Indian Way. So Indian Way, so we have lot much history and heritage with us of leadership. So I will just contribute one single couplet of Samartha Ramdas Swami, who was the Guru of Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj, through which I teach leadership program. So I will just quote, which will sum up an entire discussion of the 2 hours. What he says is one of the couplet, but I think you can use it further. So what he says in Marathi, he used Sanskrit, I'm in Pune, so we'll use Marathi also and translate in English. So he says that Mahanta Karave. Mahanta is the branch leader, you can say, the Mathadipati. So he says to his thousands of Mathadipati that don't sit just as a leader there, create further leadership. Mahanta Karave. In one single small couplet, he has given how to do it. Mahanta Karave, Yukti Buddhi ne bharave. Yukti is strategy, Buddhi is knowledge management, and bharave is inspiration. What he says, that give them strategy, make them competent, train them, and inspire them that they can do it, they can deliver. Mahanta Karave, Yukti Buddhi ne bharave. Last line he said, Janate Karun Vikarave Nana Deshi. Janate is competent. Janata Raja, he used to title Shivaji Maharaj. So that type of. So make them competent leaders and then send them to different parts of the world, appoint them at different places. So thus you run the global organization. 350 years back, Saint Ramdas, Guru of Shivaji Maharaj, in one couplet, he summed the entire thing of leadership, and there are several couplets like that on leadership in Dasbol. So I think the heritage of India, like Samartha Ramdas I teach from, so I think like that there are diamonds and jewels and whatnot, and I think we have to bank upon that also instead of 7 habits and all that. What we are having is super habits. So that's why I give title to my program as Super Habits of Dasbol. They are much beyond the modern management. I think we have to bank upon our culture and our spiritual heritage, which I think moves the entire world, it can move. So that's why I think in HR, moving from inner side at the spiritual level is the most difficult part if we use the modern management. If we use our heritage, it is easier part, and for that whatever integrity, whatever you say, it should be actually at the ground level. Otherwise, so many I think jargons we are using in management, in quality and in chamber, I'm saying for 30 years. It is all now management who have made it difficult. What I feel. So many words and jargons and so much we use, and these simple basic things, what Bobby was saying, go to basics. I think we have to go to basics and bank upon our own heritage. Thank you very much.
No further question.
It's a question to you, sir. My name is Ajit Shide and I represent Astute Group as the Vice President of Organization Development. First of all, congratulations, sir. It was indeed looked like a painstaking survey. Just a couple of questions related to the survey in the first place.
So I thought, here is my savior. He is going to say, what a great presentation. And it was,
absolutely
painstaking, not painful.
Yes, because you said it was only in about 20 size plus, but being a training and development earlier, I know what goes as an effort behind those 24 slides. So many congratulations to you, sir, in the first place. Just a question on that. You did mention that the survey was conducted about 3 years ago, and so did your slides, which said 2011. So my question is, are those things from the slides still relevant here? If yes, so what is normally the gestation period, if I may ask the question? How long would the next survey be conducted? So that's one of my questions first, and then I just want to sum up with an observation as well.
So we are live now, so you can participate in the next. So we generally put 2 years difference. That was December 2011. So really it's about 3 years back. But the next survey is on. I think some of this will change, and the new survey will throw up some new things. But some of this is which will remain for a long time. And some of the stuff that we said here in the panel, jokes aside, was pretty much about that. I talked about long term, there was long term, and we talked about values, there was values. So a lot of stuff that we talked about still looks to be very relevant.
And just one last observation, and taking a cue from what Mr. Bobby said. You mentioned a very interesting point. In India, we still are hooked up so much on relationship issues rather than performance issues. And that's where my observation comes to. Whatever that survey carries, one of the things that they should also give prominence to is how do you handle non-performers? Okay, just to put another example, what Mr. Chetan said. He said there used to be some days where you used to call people as chauffeur-driven.
We got your question. How to deal with non-performance? Anybody wants to deal with it?
Because, sorry, let me just sort of add one more thing to that, and that's what Mr. Gajendra said, that if you go in the West, you know, you just tell them once, you give a faceless memo and things are done. Now, I used to get training and development on a most diverse environment you can ever think of, on a cruise ships, 64 nationalities under one roof. Okay, and things used to get done there, you know. But again, because we had a very strong non-performance, you know, progressive disciplinary process. So how would you really incorporate that? Because that becomes a very tough thing in India.
You ask a very good question, and particularly because we operate from the heart, and that's true, relatively more than from being task-oriented, like as you described. But it's really a balance. I wouldn't say we lean completely on one end, otherwise we wouldn't really get work done. So yes, relatively more on the heart, and which is why if you notice, I don't know, and I could be wrong, you're a researcher, you can correct me, but I don't know any other country where they call organizations and people who work in the organizations as one big family. So we always are so oriented about, we are one big family, and we are in this together, and when we go down that path, that's when we struggle to do this part of the job where you have to confront or have those crucial, critical conversations with people who are not performing. But I would say two things. It doesn't have to be in isolation of family. Even in families, you tick people off, don't you? You do correct people because you love them and care for them. So to hide behind this, that how do you have these conversations? And I'd just say two things, and because I know we have a lot more questions. But I'd say two things. One, never jump a surprise. If you've been having these conversations all through the year, I don't think you ever need to jump somebody with a surprise. And assume the situation is so bad that some large organizations sometimes go through these in downturns. Doing it in an empathetic way, and doing it in a way that is respectful, and holding hands as the person transitions out, I think takes people long ways. It doesn't mean that you, and of course I'm assuming that before this, you have looked within yourself as an organization and said, why is someone not performing? Have we done everything that we can to enable them to perform? And if the answers to all of those come to a point where you say, we've done everything, but this transition needs to happen, doing it in a respectful way makes all the difference.
Thanks, yeah. Thank you, Anjali.
Okay, the lady.
I am Professor Vaishali Apte. I represent United Vision Academy. My question to Anjali, what do you think are the challenges specifically Indian women face to become leaders, and what kind of skill sets and competences they should have to cope up with these challenges?
Well, thanks, Vaishali.
For asking a question first and asking a fantastic question.
Yes. So, Vaishali, I'm going to give it my best shot. There are some things that remain the same, but I think one thing that leaders and women leaders, so let's put it that. So we'll pick from Ajay. Ajay talked about mentoring, and I think this goes back and it being so prominent in India compared to some of the other places. And I think it comes from culture, guru shishya, parampara. We tend to learn from elders, you tend to learn from people you look up to, and so on. But I think one thing that happens is that in India, when you look at the number of women in leadership positions, it really seems to dwindle somewhere along the way. And so oftentimes, a lot of women don't necessarily have women as mentors. And if you have a woman mentor or not a woman mentor, it doesn't really make a difference. But one thing that really works is don't try to be like somebody else. You are super because of who you are. And I think that really works. Sometimes I've known women and friends who would have tried to be like somebody else, and you're not in your own skin. So don't compete trying to be like somebody else. But if you pick something that is good, that makes sense, steal with pride. And go ahead and adopt it. And You will always have stereotypes, you'll always have, and nowadays people are very, very wary of even cracking jokes because they think it could be stepping beyond limits. So don't lose your sense of humor. You know, it can get pretty boring otherwise. So if you are not too touchy about everything and you're able to manage your sense of humor, I think it takes you places. Keep trying things, be yourself. You are different and that's why it is so good that you are there. Otherwise we'd just be clones of each other. So do what what your heart tells you is right, do it. And I think it'll be great. You go guns and you are doing very well, Vaishali.
And something about sense of humor. There are people who have sense of humor. There are people like me then who have nonsense of humor. I would like to come to my last question. Sorry, we can have the questions at the dinner table. I have a last question to my all panelists, which is, what is it that, in terms of developing leaders, creative, innovative, that you either do or would like to do for creating future leaders? And can I start with you? And we will then end with
Number one is identifying people who are having fire in the belly. Means the urge and willingness to perform. Second thing, to coach them on a sustained basis. Emotionally connect with them. That's the third. And to force them to learn. That is creating learning agility. What you spoke. That's fifth thing is managing ambiguity. Don't come back to me if you face any problem. Do something there. It's development of your competence, how you manage the ambiguity. And the last and the least is sustained performance. Okay? So that's the sixth thing.
Thanks, Vinod. And sorry, I missed saying that. This is a rapid fire prompt, so there is one thing. And quick, in half a minute, what is it that you are either doing creative or innovative for creating future leaders?
I think just one thing. What has been done to me or to my fellow leaders in the organization, same thing. Keep on providing enough opportunities as fast as possible without standing in their way. You don't have to think much about their compensation. Everything will be taken care of. You just keep on providing them enough opportunities and fast enough. That's it.
So one of the innovative practices that we follow at Tata Power is to accelerate leadership development for those who deserve accelerated leadership development. And that's a program, it's pretty unique at Tata Power and many other companies. It's called ACE, Accelerated Career Enhancement, where a very young leader, a very young promising leader is catapulted into a very tough and senior role through a very, very difficult selection process, and then provided with all the support to succeed.
Perfect, Bobby.
30 seconds. Four things, four beliefs. Any organization is as good as its people. People would like to be involved in what they do, and that leads to engagement. For a world-class organization, you need people with world-class thoughts. And last, and the most critical, an individual's dignity is as important as the organization's dignity. Provide and sustain a climate like this, leaders will emerge automatically.
I love rapid fires because I speak so fast, I can just be myself.
Yes.
So I'm going to do this really quick. I think what we do well, Ajay, is provide very quick career opportunities, but empower people to be responsible for their careers. We've closed like 70% leadership positions internally last year, so that's like for somebody who's with metrics to know how effective that is. The two things that I can think of the top of my head, one is definitely providing global opportunities, but when there is somebody who's really strong, young leader coming up, you can't put him in a global opportunity, you make him work on global projects or that have an impact that could would be larger than his limited scope. It could be across the current geography, across geographies. So we have training programs that actually enable them to network globally because they can get different thoughts. Not only do they network, they work collaboratively on projects with teams that could be from different nationalities. And all of this becomes a part of the training program. So that is something that I think helps driving leadership. And the other is thinking differently. We all have our own preferential styles. So you have a style, I have a style. But if we need to do sustainable value addition, you need not change your thinking style or your preferred thinking style, but you definitely need to be able to pick cues, and when you ask me a question, I assess what adds value to you based on your thinking style, and I'm able to position my value proposition based on your preference. And that is a way of creating value and therefore definitive advantage. So that's the other thing that SKF does. So we're actually running a program right now on this. And the global training programs is something that we have across levels at SKF for different kinds of leaders, but each of them having projects that are worked out. They could be in India, across countries, deep diving on a particular challenge that could be going beyond a particular factory and so on and on. So I think those are things that have really helped because you network, you work across boundaries, you work on projects beyond your limited scope. It really stretches you.
Fantastic. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank this fantastic panel, really some fantastic insights about genuinely leadership the India way. I think all of you demonstrated that, how some of the leaders have helped you in that process and how you are helping others. Also, a big thanks to all of you here. I think very informed audience, some fantastic comments and some very good questions. We wanted to keep it fun. When we started, we amongst ourselves talked about that we don't want to make it pedantic, we want it to be fun, so hope you all enjoyed. I would like to sum up by saying a few things. Number one, something that was said here, reward success, tolerance to fail, and punish non-trial. That is one of the ways of creating leaders. Goal, depending on the pitch. So leadership needs to change depending on what the pitch is all about, what the environment is all about. Your welfare is my responsibility. Of course, that assumes that there is continuous performance. So that. And finally, sir, lead from the front. Not only for defense, but offense against the competitor and for the customer. Ladies and gentlemen, a pleasure being here.
Thanks to all the panelists for sharing your experiences and giving us such a lively and exciting session here. May I now invite Mr. Kamal Singh, Director General of National HRD Network, to please deliver the formal vote of thanks.
Thank you, Professor Mansi. Ladies and gentlemen, I am not really coming between you and the cocktail and dinners waiting outside. But what I am going to really do to reserve my concluding remarks for another occasion. But surely, if you permit me, I would like to thank each one of our panelists and all of you for making what this great session was. Can I have your permission for 3 minutes? Thank you. Our distinguished chain masters, Dr. H. Chaturvedi, Professor K.K. Sinha, Ms. Anjali Bais, Mr. Ajay Soni, Mr. Gajendra Chandar, Mr. Chetan Tolia, Mr. Bobby Kuriakos, Ms. Manasi, Mr. Abhinav, Ms. Priya, Mr. Tupe, and of course my all distinguished participants. I think you will all agree with me that, of course, Vinod Chaturvedi, he is one of the distinguished panelists. Sorry for being not able to take a name. You will all agree with me that we had a very powerful and engaging roundtable under the aegis of BIMTech overwhelming. We never thought that we'll get such an overwhelming response as we have been planning in the beginning. Inspiring, motivating, engaging, and connecting with all of you. To make this happen, it is my proud privilege to propose a vote of thanks just to acknowledge each and every one for making it what it was. First of all, we are indeed grateful to our distinguished speakers, led by Mr. Ajay, Anjali, Bobby, Chetan, Gajendra, Vinod, to really making it what it was. And all of them really made us more wiser on the leadership of India way. We could not have a better treat than the cocktail and dinner meeting outside. We all really enjoyed. In fact, Dr. Chaturvedi was really asking me how this audience is so engaging because we have done roundtable anywhere. I think compliments to all of you. May I request, ladies and gentlemen, to join me in acknowledging our sincere appreciation to all our speaker, panelists, Ajay ji, by giving a big round of applause, please. They really made us so much proud, and I think I can only assure from both BIMTech and Untitled side, we are going to come to Pune again and again. Thank you very much. Secondly, our sincere gratitude to all of you for joining us in large numbers this evening. Your overwhelming response really gave testimony not only to the relevance of the theme in today's fast-changing business landscape, but also to the value proposition that all of our distinguished speakers provided to all of you. Thank you indeed. Please do join me in appreciating your overall response here this evening by again big round of applause. We are all grateful to our partners who are instrumental in shaping up this evening deliberations. To begin with BIMTech, the prime mover, one of the top business schools in the country, who really conceived the design and stitched it together, especially Professor K.K. Sinha, Professor Manasi, Abhinav, inspired by Dr. Chaturvedi. To NHRDN, Evan Hewitt and EDB Profit to present this initiative in Pune. And I must share with you, Anjali is our Pune chapter president, and she was in a way, after my taking over NHRDN role, said we would like to be the best chapter. And believe me, this year, the Pune chapter was the best chapter and we saw the response. I think Mr. Dubey ably joined that Pune can do wonders as we go along in the years. But surely, your support has been phenomenal. And our relationship with BIMTech, by the way, goes many years. And this business school has really established and proven itself and today features among the top business schools in not only in India but globally. So it is to that extent to all the partners, even Hewitt, the way they have put it together, the NDB Profit, you will see this program deferred telecast in 2 episodes. We will share the details with you once that is finalized. But I think a big hand is on order for all of them by big round of applause. Finally, I think if I have to say, NHRDN is yours, BIMTech is yours. Do join us as member. You will be happy to know, last year we had committed that we will come to Pune, so we are here. And I'm also happy to share with you our next event of under the auspices of Pune chapter is going to be on 29th. It is National Business Leadership Quiz in Suryadatta campus. And please do come. There are opportunities to compete as a team. There are opportunities as audience. And there are enough gift hampers to be won. So please do join. And you will see many teams competing from here to represent Pune chapter to the grand finale on 8th of February. Incidentally, you'll be happy to know already 200 teams from all over India have registered. I think for you there is something, and please do join us. I think that's a request. And rest for visit NHRDM website www.nhrdm.org. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you, BIMTech, for giving us the trust to be part of this entire engaging sessions. Thank you.
As a token of our gratitude, may I now request Dr. A. Chaturvedi, Director BIMTech, and Professor K.K. Sinha, the Grand Master behind this series of events, to please join me on stage. We have a few mementos for our panelists. Ms. Anjali Bais. Thank you. Mr. Bobby Kuriakozin. Mr. Chetan Tolia. Mr. Gajendra Chandel. Mr. Vinod Chaturvedi. And thank you, Mr. Ajay Soni, for leading this panel today. And thanks, Nidhi, for helping us out with that. Ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of this conclave, and I'm sure each one of you has found this program to be an insightful experience. We look forward to your continuous feedback and engagement with the organizers. One group photograph of all the panelists along with the organizers. Abhinav, can we have you on stage as well?